Welcome back to Misunderstood. I'm Rachel Yucatel. I'm really excited to bring today's guest to you. He's an old friend of mine who now is an author. The book is super fun. It is called The Shut the Fuck Up Method, Silence Your Way to the Life of Your Dreams. We've all had that one friend that all she does is complain, or he. We've once in a while been that person as well. This is a tough love manifesto. The Shut the Fuck Up Method is a wake-up call for anyone ready to ditch the moaning and groaning and start living a happier life. I'm really excited to bring this episode to you because I have such good stories with George from our past, and it's so exciting for me to see how he's turned into such a good guy. Anyway, I read the book in an afternoon. I loved it. I thought it was super funny, and also it resonated with me. And I realized how I could be a happier person if I just stopped complaining or pick one person to complain to and kind of move on. So he answers all the questions about the book. He gets into all sorts of examples to help you start being a better person today. I'm excited for you to listen to this. You're going to love George. Get the book. Again, it's called The Shut the Fuck Up Method. Listen to my conversation now with Jorge Perez. Hi, everyone. It's Rachel Yucatel from the Misunderstood podcast, and I wanted to give a shout out to our sponsor, Holistic Goddess. Holistic Goddess is a one-stop shop for all your holistic health needs. They offer a wide range of products from castor oil packs and collagen to natural bug spray. They do the hard work for us, checking ingredients and investigating where each product is made so you can focus on finding what works for you. Holistic Goddess brings on recognized brands weekly, often focusing on women-owned brands in North America. And they personally try all the products before adding them to the store. It's always exciting to see what new products they'll feature next. If you're looking for reliable health solutions that keep the unique needs of women in mind and cater to all ages and stages, definitely check out Holistic Goddess. And for 15% off, use code Understood. Go to www.holisticgoddess.com and again, use code Understood for 15% off. George, welcome, my old friend, to Misunderstood. I'm so happy to be talking to you again, finally.
Yeah, me too. Me too. So glad to be here.
You are so consistent. You are the one person that every September 11th, I get a message from you first thing in the morning, regarding, your well wishes, your thoughts for me. And our relationship goes back so far, but the fact that you do that is something that I always remember and cherish. So I don't know that I've ever told you that, but thank you.
No, you're welcome. And you always do write me back. And it's crazy how we don't talk. I mean, we're still tight, but we haven't seen each other for a while, but we always have that moment. And we're both in New York, and that's a whole nother story. But yeah,
I'll bring up that story too for a second, because we got close, I guess, during that little scandal that I was in 15 years ago. All sorts of videos and photos came out of you walking with me on the street with our other friend, Tim, back and forth just from the gym or whatever. But you were a witness to how crazy that time in my life was, right?
Oh, man, I've never seen anything like that with anybody. It was just like the whole city was obsessed with you. It was so wild. It was so wild.
Right. And what I don't think people realize is how hard that is. I mean, I think there's a lot of people that want to get themselves involved in scandals nowadays or love to be a part of a story. That was a really scary time for me. I felt really alone. I had you and Tim, but I really didn't have anyone else. I didn't know how to navigate through that. And literally there was like 50 paparazzi outside of my house on any given day. Recording and making stories out of literally everything. I mean, I think there was one time where we didn't have the keys to get in. So I had to jump over like the side railing to break into my own apartment, and everyone got it on video, and TMZ put, a whole thing in there about my ass in the camera. And it was just, everything was horrifying and terrible. And I felt like my life was ruined, and you were really there for me. But I don't think people really realize what that's like to have so many people around them. So I was really glad that you were a witness to that for me.
Oh, I'm glad I was able to be there. And it's kind of crazy to think that experiences like that, to the outside eye, I know it seems very like glamorous and who wouldn't want that attention, but I know that they also have the flip side where you must have felt, just like you didn't have any privacy. And what a crazy experience for sure for you.
Right. And the biggest thing for me is feeling misunderstood, because remember, so, of course, Tim, who's very good at letting you know all the negatives about it, would show me things on like, the dirty and all these crazy things, and bring in the Post every day, because I was on the cover of the New York Post, like literally every day for 10 days straight. And he would be like, oh my God, you look terrible. Or, oh my God, look what they're saying about you. And it was terrible on my mental health, you know what I mean? But feeling misunderstood is what I'm getting back to, about the fact that everyone had an opinion about me and it wasn't true. And it wasn't something that was my reality. And it was so hard to live in that, knowing that it would be almost impossible to change people's minds about me. And here we are 15 years later, and I've created this platform about people who have been reduced to a headline and been misunderstood, because I think it is a universal thing. You don't have to be in the public eye to have felt like that. But it was something really tragic for me that to feel that way and to feel so disconnected with people was very difficult for my mental health, I think.
Oh my God, I'm sure. It is actually, Rachel, what my chapter 1, it's actually called Heal Faster, Help Faster. And it really embodies everything you said. It's like, how can we use that most painful event or situation in our life and use it as a catalyst to help? And I think that's what you've done. You grabbed all these experiences and you've metabolized all that pain, and you're like, okay, so how could I create something and be of service for people?
Yeah. And also something that was a huge part of this scandal, I guess, was the gossip and the talk and all the comments surrounding it, which we're going to get into a second when we talk about your book, because that's a huge part of sort of what you have encapsulated as being wrong with this society. Not only that, being attributing to the stress that people go through and feeling stuck in their lives, it's because they're commenting so much about other people's lives or their own, being stuck in the what happened as opposed to moving on and living a better life. So we're going to get into that in a second. But before we do that, I just want to talk about, who you are, so people that are not familiar with you in the book can just understand your credibility behind it. You have dealt with some grief as well, as I have. And so we also, I think, have bonded over that situation. You've lost both parents. Can you talk about that a little bit and how that got you to the place where you wanted to write the book?
Yeah. So, I have been an agent producer for over 20 years in LA, but my passion has always been personal development since, I was really young in my teenage years. My mom was really a seeker, and we went to India for months and stayed at an ashram and learned with this guru. And then throughout life, this has always been a passion of mine, and but I think it definitely got detonated in 2019. My father died of leukemia, and I was his stem cell donor, but the stem cells didn't work because his body was just so compromised. Then 3 years after, my mom died of breast cancer metastasized that went to her brain. She, like I wrote in the book, she died in my arms. So I feel very blessed that I was able to be there for both of them. But definitely those two things are what took me down on a rabbit hole in studying epigenetics, which is how we as people metabolize stress and how stress detonates predisposition diseases like cancer and whatnot. And I did come to the conclusion that my parents' cancer was detonated by the amount of stress that they carried in their lives, their fight or flight. And so my commitment then became, okay, so how can I not have that fate? How can my sister not? And after really studying deep and digging into it, this book was formed, which is this book is an attempt and an invitation for people to have less stress in their lives and focusing on shutting the fuck up and really kind of rewiring how we speak, because we very innocently activate so much unnecessary stress by just conditioned ways of talking.
Right. Okay. So let's get deeper into that. And I'm so sorry about your parents, by the way. It's just, I know that feeling. I know, looking at you, I'm so proud of you because you have just a different energy about you now from when I knew you when we were younger too, by the way. And you really are a man who stands on your own 2 feet. But I know how lonely the feeling of loneliness and how you overcome that. And, you just done so well. And I love that you have this book out because it is so helpful and people should read it because it's important. Because like I said, it changes your life when you change the gossip, the comments that come out of your mouth, and it changes how you think about your own self. So I want to get into that. You start off the book talking about the 10 commandments of shut the fuck up. Can you go into some of them that are really important for people like starting this process and understanding what the book is about?
Yeah, the book is very simple in its nature, but it's also very profound. And I'm like, okay, so how can we make it really accessible for people, whether you're new to kind of self-help spirituality or you're like a pro, right? So
Yeah.
Commandment number 1 is, if you're going to talk shit about someone, don't use their name. Use my friend. Keep anonymity. And I just want people to start thinking of how we very innocently, we assassinate people's characters, even with people in our lives. Like if Maria is a friend of ours in common and I tell you, oh my God, Rachel's just every time I go out with Maria, she's so cheap. Like now I'm like infecting you with that preconceived notion of her. And maybe you never were going to experience her as cheap. Maybe that's my dynamic with Maria. But the minute I tell you, all of a sudden now you look for that behavior, then you come back to me and you're like, George, you're right. She's so cheap. So it's like, how can we take responsibility and not assassinate people's characters, And also be your brother's keeper, right? Like if I have a dynamic with somebody that I don't like, why am I going to tell you and then all of a sudden bring you into possibly having that dynamic? You see what I'm saying?
Of course.
I could actually take care of my brothers and sisters' experiences about life instead of just like, finding camaraderie and like, hey, let's have a little laugh over how cheap Maria is and then bring her character down and also your experience down. And so the commandments are based like that. The other one, I love commandment number 2, which is like, if you have a problem if you have any kind of a stress or problem, like instead of telling everybody, just pick one person, whether that's your therapist or your best friend, and that's it. And what I found in my experience also powerful is like when you sit down, like for example, if I go, Rachel, you're my only person. And I'm going to tell you about this issue that I'm having at work. And I preface it with that. Now, there's a special bond between us because you're going to bring in all your listening and you're going to be like, all right, George, let's do this. I'm your girl. So it creates a bond.
And then they're invested in that. Yeah.
Invested in that. And you'll think, I had a problem with a friend and we both decided to stop being friends. And from an intellectual level, I understood where she was coming from. She was right. I totally get it. And I needed to like let it out and tell somebody, right? So I literally called like 4 friends and I'm like, the first one that's going to call me, that will be the one. And my friend Carolina called me and I was like, all right, you're the one. And I told her and we cried and it was beautiful. And it was just to let it out. And then the 3 other people called me back and I was like, no, it's all good. I picked one person. I already did. I told them and they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah, I'm good, man. I'm good. So it made me actually think too of how we're always teaching things by our behavior, right? About what we do. So I was thinking like, how cool that I shared what I do with people. So now they're thinking, maybe I don't need to tell the world when I have an issue. Maybe I could just pick one person.
Well, gossip has become the norm, I feel like. And I feel like it also makes people think that they are creating a bond with somebody because they're gossiping about somebody that they both don't like or create some sort of thing between them that makes them stronger, when in reality, it just makes you feel worse, I think, and a bad person kind of. And is there a way, and I know you talk about this in your book, to have this like speaking clean, like this way of, to challenge people to sort of not be beyond just picking one person, but how do you shut the fuck up?
So listen, I think the best way to teach anything is just be the work, right? Like for me I call it being the shut the fuck up police. It doesn't really work. It always like, it explodes in my face. So what do I mean by that? You can literally walk into a conversation, Rachel, where 2 people are having a gossip marathon about somebody, and you don't have to join. You could just be like, when they look at you, they're like, right? You literally could say, and I put it in the book, I hear you. Like I literally hear words coming out of your mouth. And you don't have to join in and be like, yeah, she's such a bitch. And when she did this to me, you could just nod. And you know what? They might think that you're agreeing with them, but you know you're not, and that's all that matters. So that's what I would say at first. It's like start monitoring what you say when they're having those conversations. And I don't necessarily think that you should judge them in the name of like acceptance either, and be like, why are you guys gossiping? Like, we have to also be generous with people, and people are wired to their best capabilities subconsciously. So like you're right when you're saying this, like, gossip is such a normalized ritual that we all have in our society and cultures, as we go deep, I really dive deep into that. It actually has to do with, it's a survival based conversation. When we look at a gossip situation by somebody, it's like, oh my God, this guy broke up, he got caught cheating. Those are survival based conversations. And the reason why we gravitate towards it is because we feel that if we know where the danger is, it's not going to happen to us. So I do get that instinctively we like that. I mean, who doesn't like a good, in Spanish, we call it chisme, like the cheese fest, but it's a high price that we're paying because we keep ourselves, it's like a drug. It's like, yeah, a drug feels great. A drug feels great when you're doing it, but when you're coming down, you start experiencing that low. And that low has to do with you attracting more gossip conversations about people, you talking smack about people, and eventually blowing up in your face.
Can you talk about how important it is for you to kind of clean house and pick your friends a little better? Because I also do think that there's something to be said for if you have a friend that you notice is constantly saying, okay, I have something to tell you, but don't say I said this, or somebody told me this, and, I'm not supposed to tell you, but I'm going to. It should seem really obvious that if that person is sharing gossip with you, they're going to be sharing your gossip to someone else.
I know. And you know why we keep coming to those people? Because we're also addicted.
I know.
That's the thing. So it's like we look to the side that we know for a fact that motherfucker is telling everything about your life because we're so in the trenches of that dynamic, So I talk about it in the book. I had a really good friend that, every time I got together with him, he would tell me everybody's secrets. And I was just like, dude, you're basically telling everybody what I'm sure you're telling everybody what I'm telling you. And I did address it a couple of times. I was like, dude, when you're saying this, what do you think what do you think I know for a fact you're doing? He's like, I would never do that about you. And I'm like, all right. So a couple of things. It just got a little boring after a while because I didn't feel like I could trust them. And then what? We're getting together and I'm not talking about anything juicy. I'm not opening my soul to you because I know that you're telling everybody what I'm doing, Mm-hmm. And the other thing is that I just felt that, listen, and I go into it in the book a lot. I think friendships are wonderful, but they also have an expiration date, and that's okay too. Because listen, in this 3-dimensional world, right? Like we get up, we only have so many hours. You have your daughter, you have your work, you have your friends, you have your own self-care. We don't have that much time for dealing with people that are not aligned with us anymore. So it's actually a good thing to let them go because then guess what? You're going to make more room for new people to come into your life. And also, by the way, I have so many friends of mine that I love them to death and they can't help that subconscious addiction of gossiping. And you can love them from afar. You can love them from afar.
So you've also talked in your book about, it's important to lean out your life and part ways with the ones you need to. But then sometimes, and I'm going to get the wording wrong here, but sometimes it's okay to have people in your life that are toxic because it allows you to work on, flex your skills about tuning them out. Explain that a little bit better than I am.
I love that you picked up on that. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Okay. So consider this. So let's call everything your environment, right? So it's like traffic on the 405 is an environment to overcome. Your friend that's always gossiping, it's an environment. So how can you, Rachel, you could tell, get freedom from the environment and be okay with the way it is? I'm sorry. I know that, you never want to be in traffic, but you will find yourself in the 405 once in a while. And you got to put an audiobook or you got to relax, right? Because you will encounter those things. So I have a friend that he loves to, he's a smacker talk. And 2 weeks ago, I was like, you know what? I text him like, what are you doing? He's like, come over, I'm having a barbecue. And I'm like, And I knew that I was going into battle. So I was like, you know what? This is good. This is a moment. I'm going to flex my shut the fuck up skills. And I'm going to go to your house and I'm going to practice I hear you. I hear you. Oh, yeah. Wow. Or like, whatever. And you just, wow. And it just felt like I was going to a really good workout, because now I get to not agree when you're talking shit about someone, but I get to almost like change the subject. I get to put in, kind of control the conversation. And I kept doing it. When they would fall into gossip things, I would talk about politics. I know that's any good. I would talk about different things, and it worked. So I like what you brought up, because it's not just about, listen, I'm a very eclectic human being, right? I love people from all types of industry. I love my spiritual people, but I love my entertainment people. And I'm not just going to like hang out with like all the saints from now on. Like, I love my entertainment people, because I also get to really put into work all these skills that I now have. So I think it's important to purposely, in a way, put yourself in those situations. So then when you walk away from it, Rachel, you're patting yourself on the back and be like, you know what? There was gossip all around me, but I didn't join in. And that's awesome.
Right. You talk a lot in your book about how meditation has helped you. How did it help you, and why do you think it's important for people?
Yeah. So meditation is key. And I'm very sympathetic with people, and I'm like, you're going to hate me for this, because I think people get, some people can get really triggered by meditation. So what happens
I don't like it. I feel like I'm going to get Tourette's syndrome and I'm going to start yelling or something if I'm that quiet. All my to-do list comes in. I can't do it. I can't focus. Not yet, at least in my life. But that's why I wanted to know why you like it so much.
So listen, going back to even the genesis of why I wrote this book, is that studies are showing that people are living 70% of their lives in fight or flight. Okay. This is not sustainable for the human body. Mm-hmm. It's almost like, think about it this way. It's like you're in LA and you're driving to Las Vegas on second gear the whole time. You're going to burn the engine down. So how do we get out of fight or flight and come to a more like a balanced state of mind? Meditation, and the reason why in the book I say you want to do it either in the morning, right when you wake up, or right before bed, it's because your brain is in theta. When your brain is in theta state, you're highly suggestible. Think about it like you're going into the hardware of the computer, and that's where you're doing the reprogramming. Mm-hmm. So listen, Rachel, you could do 5 minutes. You can't do 5 minutes of meditation?
I don't know.
Try. Okay, so this is what I tell people. 5 minutes, go on YouTube, get a guided one. Get like the sound of like a river or a lake, or just nature, right? Do 5 minutes. Rachel, you're not going to believe. Okay, so this is what happens when you do.
But is it about turning your brain off completely and trying to literally not think of anything? Or you're like, I sort of don't get it.
Okay, so what it is, you're introducing a new way of being into your brain. Your brain is like, look, you wake up in the morning and I'm sure you're thinking about the podcast, your kid, what are you doing, the gym, blah, blah, blah.
So it's to quiet your brain.
It's to quiet your brain. So then now your brain, instead of recycling 70,000 stressful thoughts like it does every day, because the human brain is so freaking effective that what it's doing is just recycling old thoughts all the time. When you meditate, you're introducing new thoughts and new ways, new brain patterns. So guess what? Somebody cuts you off in traffic, Rachel. You notice that you don't get pissed. You're like, oh, hey, no, it's okay. Or you think, oh my God, this poor guy, he was probably running late for work. Or like, oh my God, this poor lady, I don't know if her son's in the hospital. You see what I'm saying? But you don't have access to that if you don't condition it with a meditation. You go back to your automatic way of like, this motherfucker. The meditation is what realigns your state of being. And you're going to, so that's why I say it's a really important part of the shut the fuck up method. You need to meditate so then you can have that almost like matrix, like slowing down. You can see yourself not being reactive.
Right. Okay. So something that I read in your book, you said there was a statistic. Subconscious mind runs 95% of what happens to us. Can you talk a little bit about that? And
sure.
So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So basically, the subconscious mind is your habits, the way that you've ever done. Like, you know how you get into a car? Remember the first time you got into a car, you were like, oh my God, the steering wheel drive. Like, and now what? Now you can drive and you can be on the phone, you can be on TikTok, you don't even think about it. So our subconscious mind, which is actually in our body, is the one that dictates everything that we do. This is why we keep doing the things that we do same way. Our conscious mind, which is what you and I are having, is only 5%, meaning that at the end of the day, your subconscious mind is going to end up doing what it does. And this means nothing, right? It's like the same reason when like, oh my God, I'm going to go on a diet. I'm not going to eat any more pizza. And then the next morning, your body's like, no, let's start tomorrow. You know what I mean? So the only way to rewire the subconscious mind is through meditation.
And how important is what we're telling ourselves? Like, is that different than manifestation? Speak about like your voice to yourself and how that's important to get through the day and to de-stress yourself.
So here's the thing. So the shut the fuck up method is not repression. It's mindfulness. Okay. So I want you to think about it like almost like, you're a pretty fit girl. Like think about it like when you're on a diet or in a fast, right? So when you're fasting or when you're in a diet and you're picking your friend up at a pizza party, right? You don't walk into a pizza party and you're like, oh my God, why am I repressing myself from pizza? No, you're intimate with your goal, right? Your goal is fitness. So same thing with how we talk about others and how we talk about ourselves. So what if you start using that willpower, like let's say in some areas of your life to eat healthy? Why don't you speak healthy, right? What if you didn't talk smack about people? The more that you stop talking bad about people, the more that you're going to stop talking bad about yourself. This goes back to what I was telling you. When I walk into a conversation and somebody's talking shit about people, now I don't get mad at all. I actually feel compassion because you know what? When everybody leaves that room and that person's by themselves, they go ham on themselves.
Yeah.
So you got to start speaking clean for you. They're almost like the collateral damage benefit of it, but you're the one that's going to benefit from it because the kinder you are to them, the kinder that you will be to you.
Right. One thing that I made a note of when I was looking at your book, chaos. It's part of the process. And I think what people forget is like, this isn't just going to happen overnight and lives are chaotic. And that's what, there's a lot of chaos going on. And I do you think it's important for people to know that it's okay to have some chaos going on? It doesn't mean you're not following this less stressed life. Like, what are your thoughts on chaos?
Absolutely. I think that I love all the things that you're bringing up. They're awesome. So basically, and I bring it down to the biggest chaos in the world, which was the Big Bang, right? Out of the Big Bang, right, that huge explosion, the universe was created, right? So then I bring that down to like, if you look at a jar with cells on a microscope, you're going to see bacteria fighting. There's chaos, right? And out of that fighting of all the bacteria, a cell will be born. Out of that cell, an organ will be born. Out of that organ, a body part will be born. And out of that, a human was born. So what I'm trying to say is that out of chaos came order, right? So let's bring it to an everyday example. Let's talk about you renovating your home. If you walk into the middle of a renovation, you look at everything, you're like, oh my God, the floor is coming off the ceiling. But out of that chaos, your brand new home is going to come out of. So chaos is part of the process. Again, I'm not condoning the war. I'm not condoning things, but how can we narrate chaos in a way that it's a lot more gentler for us, And I go deep into saying, listen, what if, I do work with Hollywood Food Coalition. We feed the homeless in LA, right? And I'm there once a week for a couple of hours feeding the homeless. If I'm looking at the homeless people and I'm going, oh my God, these guys are fucked and LA is going down to hell and all this stuff. But I choose the narrative to say, you know what? These are people that are trying the best that they can. And because them being homeless, I get to be the best part of myself, which is somebody that helps. Mm-hmm. If they didn't need that help, I wouldn't be able to be the best of me. Right.
Right.
So it's like, how can we switch the narrative of that chaos and be like, this is part of the order? Like, I know we're looking at Gaza and all that stuff. And of course that stuff is horrible, but man, maybe there is some order that is being created behind the scenes. So, the new peace could come at some point. And of course, no one wants anyone to die. But do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course. Of course. So for people that are listening and are going to get your book, haven't maybe gotten it yet, give us a few tips and tricks that you would say stand out to you. And essentially, it's about making yourself a better person, I think. But, what are your tips and tricks that really stood out from writing this book, from doing some research and from going through it in your everyday life?
You know what? The more that you start speaking clean about others And this is where I say it's almost like willpower, right? It's like you're not, everyone's having pizza and you're thinking about that summer body and you're going, hell no, I'm not going to do it. You know what I mean? So I think the more that we get into the habit of speaking clean and watch what we say, it's almost like a crack in the wall, Rachel. It starts to grow. And you're going to start seeing that it's like the greatest rabbit hole, because every no is going to feel like a yes. Your refractory period. What I mean by refractory is like your time of being upset with anything, it's going to shorten. It all comes down to how you talk about yourself and others. So just monitor. If you walk away with anything from this book, is watch what you say, and not that you want to put up with people or situations that you don't like, but you could, instead of telling 10 people, you could tell one person. If you have an issue with somebody, you go straight to the source. You know what I mean? It's just clean up what your conversations are about your life. And also another thing that I talk about in the book that I think it's so powerful. Listen, and this goes like really deep into like quantum physics, right? Because when we observe something, we actually we make it be what it is. Like when we call it out, like if you meet somebody, you go, that girl's a bitch. You locked in her particles, so then she has to prove you right. So whatever you think and you believe, you're going to end up being right. So if it's not something that you want, commit yourself to being wrong about what you think.
Well, also, I guess my next question then would be about how could you interact in situations where you're in a tense situations, like with your boss or whatever, and normally it would be to be combative. Like, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that the message here is just to be more compassionate, empathetic. Maybe when you're trying to when you're in an argument with somebody, maybe think more about where they're coming from as opposed to being worried about being heard. But I think there's a different message there too about how not just you're talking about other people and putting complaining out there, but when you're in situations that you need to communicate better, it might be good to take a step back and be empathetic with who you're in an argument with.
Yeah, I think it all kind of works in cohesiveness, because the more that you do your 5-minute meditation, Rachel, the more that you're going to have less of a knee-jerk reaction to being right. So when people are expressing themselves, it's almost like something in you, innately in you, is going to activate, and you're going to be like, you know what? This is his point of view, and he just wants to be heard. You don't have to agree, but you can let people be heard. Listen, most of the time, we just want to be heard. We don't really need for you to act on what we're saying. Just give us the space to be heard. But most of the time, we're acting so out of survival and reactive, we don't even let you finish because we're thinking already of all the things we have to do. But what if you just let that person speak and let them be heard? One of the commandments is like, listen twice as much as you speak, you know? It's like, how can you bring up a behavior of listening and not just wait for your turn to talk?
So now that people, let's say, who are listening are following the shut the fuck up method, what would you say is, I don't want to use the word fallout, but what are the results that people will get and they'll start to see in terms of relationships with others, with themselves, physically? What do you predict for people if they follow this method?
You know, it's so funny. I used to get so much pleasure out of getting my way, right? Let's say like getting that job, getting that guy, whatever it is, right? Getting all my goals and that I have on my checklist. But now, Rachel, I get more pleasure out of not getting what I want and see who I am in that moment. I feel that trust of, you know, a business appointment canceled, or a friend, date with a friend, or whatever it is. Like, hey, I have to reschedule. I noticed that I just feel like actually the unknown brings me more excitement than what I thought was going to happen. And you know what? Last Tuesday, I was supposed to have lunch with a friend, dinner with a friend. I just came back from traveling and he canceled. And right away, I was like, okay. Then right away, another friend called me. He's like, hey, do you want to go to Bird Street tonight for dinner? It's this restaurant in LA that I haven't gone to yet. And I'm like, oh yeah. And then I had the most amazing dinner. But you see, you start becoming so much more trusting of the unknown, and every no starts to feel like a yes. So once you start this process, it's just such a powerful rabbit hole of just trusting the universe. Nothing affects you. Listen, you're not run anymore by the five senses, right? Smell, touch, feel, taste. you still want your pleasures in life, but they're not the one that they don't have you chokehold into the wall anymore. You start feeling like almost like your emotional autonomy. You're emotionally independent of what goes on in your life doesn't really take away your peace. So it's like we're not in like this roller coaster anymore. Your boss was nice, you're happy. Your boss was mean, you're sad. Your kid was in a good mood, that you're happy. Your kid was, you're actually like 90% of how you feel, it's unmessable. And then you can fluctuate 10% up or down, but this 90% is solid.
Right. I love that. Your happiness is not determined by somebody else's actions.
By any external sources. And you know what are external sources? The money in our bank, our physical health, believe it or not, is also an external source. I work with people that have ALS and MS, and Rachel, like the amount of peace that you have to get in. I mean, we're so blessed here. Look at us. You and me are thriving, right? But we can still go into a rabbit hole of like, why don't I have this thing? Why am I not, right? But when you work with people that have ALS, and these people are just like, bro, I just want to be able to move my arm. And then you think, but even them, right? The ones that do the work get to a place where they're like, it's okay. I'm not supposed to move my arms. And you know what? Millions of people will kill to be in my situation. So you start becoming a lot more like an innate perspective of your life kicks in.
And I did read that in something that you wrote about how you've talked to people that feel more free in the new body that they're in, as opposed to when they were quote unquote healthy.
Yeah. No,
but their mindset has changed so much that they feel like a more free and happy person because they can appreciate what they do have, and they're starting to see life differently, which was really mind-blowing when I read that.
It was this guy that I was helping with ALS, who, you know, it's a disease that starts to inhibit your motor skills, right? And he told me, and he meant it, he's like, I feel more at peace now than when I had full body control and I was depressed, because he's so in gratitude about his life. And I'm telling you, and I want people to know this, a lot of those diseases, ALS, MS, Parkinson's, they get detonated by our emotional stress. So this guy with ALS, he's a regular guy my age that he got so stressed out about his life. And he even told me, he's like, dude, I know why this happened to me. Because every time I had an issue with people, I would tell everyone, and then I had to manage all those conversations. So let's say you have a problem with your ex and you tell all your friends, and then you decide to get back with the ex. But then your friend is like, hey, so whatever happened with them? And you're like, oh, you know, I forgave him. And then she's like, oh, Rachel. You know what I mean? Like, we have to be responsible that we create all these conversations, and then then we have to manage them.
Right. I know. I agree with you.
And then guess what? You get back with the ex, and all your friends hate him, and then you're like, no, Sally, he changed. And they're like, no, he's a fucking dick. And so it's like, so before you open your big fat mouth and start talking smack about your ex that you might get back with, pick that one person, and that's it.
Right. I agree. Okay. I know you've talked about living in the moment and not getting hijacked by our future and always worrying about that. So I want to quickly ask you, what are you looking forward to in your present, or like, what are you doing right now in your present that makes you happy?
Oh my God. Well, let me tell you something. I'm super excited about this book. And to me, like, what really, you know, this other woman with ALS, called me the other day. I go into a lot of these retreats. By the way, I can't speak higher enough about Dr. Joe Dispenza. He does these meditation retreats all over the world, and they balance out they reprogram your subconscious mind. And a lot of people go there that have ALS or MS. And I met this woman that just finished reading the book, and she has ALS, and she called me and she was like, this book has given me so much peace. And so right now I'm just so excited about getting it out there. I'm so grateful to you that you wanted me to come to your show, because the more people that find out about this, and I made it in such a way that's so easily digestible. I mean, you've been reading it. It's like baby steps. I take it from baby steps all the way to your PhD Black Diamond Mountain. So I go to quantum, but I bring you to like your best friend and how she won't stop talking shit about you. And it's all connected because we're all energy, you know? So I'm just really excited of putting this thing out there. Wednesday, I'm leaving with my family to Punta Mita, and taking my sister, my niece, my stepmom. And, you know, my stepmom, she's still kind of hurting a bit from my dad's passing. And this is the first time that I'm taking her on a vacation. I think it's going to be a lot of healing. So I'm just so present to the miracle of my moment. Like if we all really honed in into what a gift it is to have this moment, which is the only thing that's guaranteed. I talk about this. It's like, for as much as we have all these goals and what's your 5-year plan? Well, fuck that. What's your 1-day plan? Like how many people got hit by a truck and then forget all that stuff went out the window. So how can we cultivate a life where we could just be so grateful for this moment and yet excited about life in general?
I think your book is fantastic. Everyone should read it. I think it's really important, especially in the culture that we're having today and what we're all going through with the politics in America right now as well. Everyone has something to say about someone else. No one is listening. No one is listening to other people's opinions and respecting them. Everyone is gossiping. I think your book already, as you told me, is a huge hit, but can be, something that is a staple for people to become a better person, to learn how to, or to remind themselves how to be a little bit more empathetic. Everyone should read it. It's called The Shut the Fuck Up Method. Tell people where they can get it right now.
They can get it on Amazon. It's been the #1 bestseller for personal development for the last 2 weeks since it came out. So I'm so grateful. And Amazon's just literally like you order it today, you get it in 2 days. It's
true. I got it the next day.
They're savage.
And you guys, it's such an easy
and I did
read.
the audiobook too, by the way. So if you want to hear my voice, it's me.
Oh, amazing. Oh my God, that must have been so fun. Well, I appreciate you. I can't wait to see you in person and catch up with you. You're the best. I love the transformation and I love that you have these words of wisdom because it's not like it's anything new, but the way you say it is so powerful and it's like a wake-up call. It's like, wait, why haven't we been doing this? But it starts with yourself, but it would be great for everyone to pass this message on to people because the more you can spread it, then it catches on like wildfire and everyone can behave a little bit better. So
yeah, you said it. Thank you.
Yeah, I love you. Thank you so much for doing the show. Thank you for getting this message out. And I'm very proud of you. I hope the book does really well.
I love you. Thank you, honey. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to Misunderstood. I'm your host, Rachel Yucatel. Please be sure to subscribe to the show and give us a 5-star rating and review. You can support the show by joining our Patreon at patreon.com/misunderstood with Rachel Yucatel. Do you have ideas for the show or want to reach out? Email us at info misunderstoodpodcast@gmail.com. That's spelled MISS understood. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.